In the dim fluorescence of a packed courtroom in Atlanta, Georgia, on a sweltering afternoon in 1992, the air hung heavy with the scent of polished wood and unspoken prejudices. The room buzzed with the low murmur of spectators, lawyers shuffling, papers, and the occasional cough echoing off the high ceilings. At the center of it all stood a black woman named Maya Ellis, her posture straight despite the invisible weight pressing down on her shoulders. She was there not as a defendant, but as a silent observer, her dark eyes scanning the proceedings with a quiet intensity that belied her inner storm. Suddenly, without warning, two burly police officers stationed at the doors lunged forward. Their faces twisted in unwarranted aggression. They targeted Maya amid the chaos of a heated trial. One officer's hand flew out, connecting with a sharp slap across her cheek that reverberated like a gunshot through the silent hall. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Maya staggered, her hand instinctively rising to her stinging skin, the metallic taste of blood filling her mouth. The slap wasn't just physical, it was a manifestation of deep-seated racism, a blatant assertion of power over someone they deemed lesser simply because of her skin color. Whispers erupted. Why her? What did she do? But the officers smirked, their badges gleaming under the lights, embodying the systemic bias that had plagued the justice system for generations. Yet, in the frozen seconds that followed, the courtroom's dynamics shifted irreversibly. Maya straightened, her eyes locking onto the judge's elevated bench with a fire that promised retribution. What no one knew, not the officers, not the attorneys, not even the judge himself, was that this moment of humiliation was the spark that would ignite a transformation. Maya wasn't just any woman. She carried secrets forged in the fires of injustice, and in mere moments she would claim a seat of power that would challenge the very foundations of the room's corrupt equilibrium. The slap echoed not as an end, but as the beginning of a reckoning, where the oppressed would rise to judge the oppressors. Maya Ellis had grown up in the shadowed alleys of Atlanta's underserved neighborhoods, where the American dream felt like any distant mirage. Born in 1965 to a single mother who scrubbed floors in white-owned offices to make ends meet, Maya learned early that the world wasn't colorblind. It was deliberately selective in its blindness. Her childhood was marked by subtle and overt acts of discrimination. The store clerks who followed her suspiciously, the teachers who dismissed her intelligence, and the neighbors who whispered slurs behind closed doors. But Maya was resilient, her mind a sharp blade honed by adversity. She devoured books from the local library, dreaming of a future where she could wield influence to dismantle the barriers that confined her people. By her early 20s, Maya had clawed her way through community college on scholarships and part-time jobs, majoring in criminal justice with a fire in her belly. She witnessed firsthand the disparities in the system. Black men sentenced harsher than their white counterparts for the same crimes, women like her mother overlooked in labor disputes. It was during her internship at a local legal aid clinic that the seeds of her ambition took root. There, she assisted in cases of police brutality, listening to stories that mirrored her own experiences. Unwarranted stops, excessive force, all laced with racial animus. One case in particular haunted her. A young black man beaten senseless by officers during a routine traffic stop, only for the court to dismiss the evidence as inconclusive. Determined to infiltrate and reform from within, Maya pursued law. School at night while working days as a paralegal. The journey was grueling. She faced microaggressions from professors who questioned her place and classmates who assumed she was there on affirmative action quotas. Yet she graduated with honors, her diploma a testament to her unyielding spirit. Now, in her late 20s, Maya had secured a position as an assistant district attorney, but her true calling simmered beneath the surface. She volunteered at civil rights organizations, advocating for victims of racial profiling, all while navigating a world that expected her to remain silent and grateful. On that fateful day in 1992, Maya entered the courthouse not in her professional capacity, but incognito, blending into the crowd to observe a high-profile trial involving police misconduct. The defendant was a white officer accused of assaulting a black teenager, and the proceedings dripped with bias, the judge interrupting black witnesses, the prosecution soft-pedaling evidence. Maya sat quietly, notebook in hand, documenting, the injustices unfolding before her. Little did she know, her mere presence would trigger the officer's ire, their slap a knee-jerk reaction to seeing a black woman who dared to watch with unflinching eyes. As the pain radiated through her face, Maya's mind raced back through years of suppressed rage, fueling a resolve that would soon erupt into action. The courtroom descended into a tense hush following the slap, the officer's smug expressions faltering slightly as Maya's composure held firm. She didn't cry out or cower. Instead, she met their gazes with a steely resolve that unnerved them. The judge, an older white man named Harlan Whitaker, banged his gavel half-heartedly, muttering about order without addressing the assault directly. It was a microcosm of the larger system. Violence against black bodies overlooked, dismissed, as a momentary lapse rather than a pattern of abuse. Spectators shifted uncomfortably, some whispering in outrage, others averting their eyes, complicit in their silence. Maya's thoughts swirled as she stood there, the sting on her cheek a burning reminder of countless similar incidents. She recalled her first encounter with police racism at age 12, when officers raided her neighborhood, dragging her uncle away on flimsy charges while ignoring the real criminals in affluent areas. That event had scarred her, planting the seed of distrust that grew into activism. In law school, she delved deeper, studying landmark cases like Rodney King's beating and the subsequent riots, analyzing how juries acquitted officers despite video evidence. Her research revealed statistics that chilled her. Black Americans were 3 times more likely to be killed by police, with courts often failing to hold them accountable. As the trial resumed, Maya felt the weight of history pressing upon her. She had prepared for this moment unknowingly, amassing evidence on systemic bias through years of quiet investigation. In her briefcase, hidden among the crowd's belongings, were files documenting patterns of racial discrimination in that very courthouse, disproportionate sentencing, biased jury selections, and a string of unreported assaults by the same officers, now facing her. But the slap ignited something primal. It wasn't just personal, it was emblematic of the broader struggle. Black women like her were doubly marginalized, their bodies violated and their voices silenced in spaces meant to dispense justice. The tension built as the afternoon wore on. The defendant officer took the stand, his testimony laced with deflections. "I feared for my life," he claimed, a tired refrain used to justify brutality against unarmed black youth. Maya watched as the prosecution, led by a timid white attorney, failed to challenge him effectively. Whispers grew among the black spectators, a undercurrent of frustration bubbling up. Outside the courthouse, news of the slap began to spread via word of mouth, drawing activists and media who sensed a story brewing. Maya, still in her seat, began to formulate a plan, her mind racing through legal precedents. She knew the civil rights laws inside out, Title VII, the Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, and how they were routinely ignored. Hours ticked by, the courtroom air growing thicker with unspoken accusations. The officers patrolled the aisles, their presence a looming threat, eyeing Maya periodically as if daring her to react. She remained composed, but internally, the emotional stakes heightened. Memories flooded her. Her mother's exhausted face after enduring racial slurs at work, the friends lost to incarceration for minor offenses, the community rallies where promises of change evaporated like morning dew. This wasn't just about one slap. It was about the cumulative toll of racism, the way it eroded dignity and perpetuated cycles of poverty and violence. As the session neared a break, a pivotal shift occurred. The judge announced a recess, but not before a clerk approached with urgent news. Whispers circulated that an emergency had arisen. The presiding judge's health faltered, requiring immediate substitution. The courtroom buzzed with confusion, attorneys scrambling. Maya, sensing an opportunity, rose slowly, her heart pounding. She had credentials few knew about. Not only was she an assistant DA, but she had recently been appointed as a special magistrate for emergency hearings, a role kept low profile due to political sensitivities in a racially charged city. The slap, meant to humiliate, had instead positioned her at the precipice of power. The rising pressure culminated in a wave of realizations among the crowd. Activists outside chanted faintly, their voices seeping through the walls, amplifying the injustice. The officers, oblivious to Maya's true identity, lounged arrogantly, unaware that their act of aggression had set in motion a chain of events that would expose the rot within. Maya's emotional turmoil peaked. She felt the ghosts of ancestors, urging her forward, the weight of future generations depending on her courage. The courtroom, once a symbol of oppression, teetered on the edge of transformation, the air electric with impending change. The courtroom doors swung open after the extended recess, and chaos briefly ensued as medical personnel wheeled out Judge Whitaker on a stretcher, his face pale from a sudden heart episode. Murmurs filled the air, a mix of concern and speculation. The bailiff called for order, announcing that a replacement judge would preside immediately to avoid mistrial. All eyes turned to the bench as a court administrator scanned the room, clutching a sealed envelope with emergency protocols. In that charged moment, Maya Ellis stepped forward from the spectator seats, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. She presented her credentials to the bailiff, a badge and documents confirming her role as a duly appointed special magistrate, empowered to handle urgent cases in the judge's absence. The room fell into stunned silence as she ascended the steps to the bench, her hand grazing the wooden armrest where Whitaker had sat moments before. The officers who had slapped her froze, their faces draining of color, realization dawning like a thunderclap. The reversal was swift and profound. Maya, now seated in the judge's chair, gavel in hand, surveyed the courtroom with authority earned through years of overlooked struggle. The defendant officer, still on the stand, shifted uneasily, his earlier confidence evaporating. Maya called the court to order, her presence a living rebuke to the racism that had precipitated the incident. She ruled on pending motions with precision, admitting suppressed evidence of the officer's prior racial biases, records of slurs, disproportionate arrests in black neighborhoods that the previous judge had sidelined. The emotional peak hit as Maya addressed the slap directly in her rulings, citing it as prima facie evidence of systemic misconduct. The officers were ordered detained for investigation, their badges stripped pending review. Gasps echoed. For the first time, many in the room witnessed accountability in action. Maya's heart raced, the power intoxicating yet burdensome. She felt the weight of representation, knowing this moment could inspire or invite backlash. The climax crested with her banging the gavel, adjourning the session amid applause from black spectators, the air alive with a sense of long-denied justice. In the days following Maya's unexpected ascension to the bench, the courthouse incident rippled outward like shockwaves from an earthquake. News outlets descended on Atlanta, framing the story as a watershed moment in the fight against racial injustice. Headlines blared, slapped in court, black woman becomes judge in dramatic twist. Activists hailed it as a victory, organizing rallies that drew thousands, chanting for reforms. The officers involved faced swift consequences, indictments for assault and civil rights violations, their careers shattered under the scrutiny Maya had unleashed. Maya herself transitioned into a full-time judicial role, her emergency appointment solidified by public outcry and gubernatorial support. She presided over cases with unwavering fairness, implementing policies to combat bias, mandatory implicit bias training for court staff, diverse jury pools, and transparency in police interactions. Her courtroom became a beacon, where victims of racism found their voices amplified rather than muted. Communities once skeptical of the system began to engage, filing lawsuits that exposed entrenched inequalities. On a personal level, Maya healed from the slap's physical and emotional scars through therapy and community support, channeling her pain into advocacy. She mentored young Black lawyers, sharing her journey as a blueprint for resilience. The incident sparked broader changes. Legislation in Georgia mandating body cameras for officers, inspired by her testimony before lawmakers. Nationally, it fueled discussions on police reform, echoing in congressional hearings and influencing policies that reduced racial disparities in sentencing. Yet, the resolution wasn't without challenges. Maya faced threats from those resistant to change, anonymous letters, online harassment. But she stood firm, protected by a network of allies. Her story inspired a generation, with books and documentaries chronicling her rise, emphasizing how one act of defiance could dismantle oppression. In the end, Maya's triumph underscored a profound truth. Racism thrives in silence, but crumbles under the light of courage. As she reflected from her bench years later, watching a diverse array of faces in her courtroom, she pondered the ripple effects. What if more rose to claim their rightful seats? The gavel's echo lingered, a call to action for all to confront. Injustice, ensuring that no slap goes unanswered, no voice unheard.